Welcome to the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, where it is never too early for fantasy football. My name is Jeff.
And I'm Alex.
As always, thank you for downloading, listening, liking, and commenting on our podcast videos. Please join our community by subscribing to us on the socials. Our handle on all platforms is at N2E Fantasy. We're also available on all major podcasting apps by searching N2 Fantasy. Alex, what do we have on today's show?
Today's episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, we are recapping all Week 13 action. But first, we have a little bit of league news. Jeff, why don't you break down the coaching change here?
Oh, so the Bears finally decided to let go and fire head coach Matt Eberflus, and it was a long time coming for me. I don't believe that he should have had a opportunity with Caleb Williams, because the Bears are notorious for drafting a quarterback, firing a coach after year one. This is a little bit different because he didn't make it through year one. I believe this is their first coaching fire mid-season, but with good cause. Matt Eberflus really bungled the Thursday night Thanksgiving Day game, and I don't know how you come back from that one, because he was also defending the bungled decision.
Oh, it was awkward because they let him do the interview and then fired him after the interview, which just shows the dysfunction in Chicago. But
it does, but they're still paying him anyways, so you might as well have him work for you for a little bit longer. I mean, they're still paying him at home right now.
I've maintained that they should have fired him in the offseason when they were already planning on a quarterback change. They should have done the two together. Everything would have been more synergized. You can move forward. But instead, they only wanted to do one of those things, and predictable results with how he's managed these games. There's so many times. There was one game he had 30 seconds on the board and never called a timeout. The clock ran out, and instead of having multiple plays, only had one play, and the game was over. It's the worst clock management I've ever seen. The worst decision making at the end of a game, especially. Good riddance, and I think he might resurface as a defensive coordinator somewhere, but I don't think he should ever be a head coach in the NFL again. It's just not. It's just not for him. So
no, and he should be a defensive coordinator though. But and his side of the ball was actually pretty good this year. So there is silver lining, and I do expect him back in the league, just never as a head coach again.
Yeah, and I expect they're going to go after Ben Johnson and poach him from Detroit, which is always a double win because you take talented coach away from a rival and you make him your head coach. But in the short term, they've got former Panthers coach Thomas as their interim head coach. What do you make of that? He's got promoted to offensive coordinator, and now he got promoted again to head coach.
Well, you know how I feel about interim coaches. Like, I don't believe they should ever be the guy, because there's a reason why you fired the head coach to begin with, and it's probably better to get the entire system out of there. So I think this will be for the last 5 to 6 games, and that'll be it. And I think he's auditioning, probably not for head coaching jobs right now, but probably for a coordinator job in the January-February range, depending on when people hire this year. But
I agree.
And I will say that Ben Johnson was rumored to have wanted this job, and that's why he withdrew himself from consideration from the other jobs last year. So I think that that's where he's going to fit in here. And if I'm looking at the jobs that he didn't take last year that he was interviewing for and actually in like serious contention for, Washington was one of them. I think that he would have had a field day with Jaden Daniels as well. So I wonder if there's any regret to seeing how Jaden Daniels is playing as the number 2 pick and him not going there and having a piece and a part in that, especially with so Philly's good in that division, but Dallas isn't good. Giants aren't good, and Philly's going to eventually hit a point where they just get old. And so that division was winnable for the foreseeable future with Washington. So I wonder if he's going to regret staying with the Green Bays, the Lions, and the Vikings of it all.
Well, I think he did Washington a favor because they ended up with a good coaching staff and they're doing very well this year despite not having that much. I'm wondering if the Giants regret taking a wide receiver instead of a quarterback this past draft. It seems like a huge missed opportunity for them.
Yeah, that's extremely possible. That's interesting. I would love to see the 2024 rookie draft redrafted now based on how the 2024 season went. But it would have made more sense for them to take like a Bo Nix or even a Michael Penix in that spot looking back, because now, and I assume they probably would have took JJ McCarthy and they would have been in the same spot that they are right now, because I'm assuming injuries would have stayed the same. So they knew Daniel Jones wasn't the guy, and someone, probably the GM, asked them to do one more year with Daniel Jones and see if he'll work, because they signed him to 2 guaranteed years. But they already knew. Like, they were quick at benching him because of the injury guarantee. Like, they knew. So if they didn't know, they would still be trying to ride him out there right now. So they knew ahead of time, and they were forced to stick with him.
I don't think this is that good of a year for quarterbacks because initially at the beginning of the season and early in the season for it seemed like there would be some good prospects, but now I'm not as thrilled with this set either. So we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there any other league news before we get to the sad part of league news here?
No, let's get to the double whammy here for the 49ers. They lost 2 running backs. They lost Christian McCaffrey again to a PCL injury, likely out the rest of the season. We have Jordan Mason, who got an ankle injury, may or may not be able to come back until the end of the season. Both these guys may come back if they make the playoffs, but at this point, I doubt that.
Yeah, so this continues that Super Bowl hangover that we talked in the offseason, that you shot me down with the Niners potentially missing the playoffs, and here we are. They're potentially going to miss the playoffs.
I didn't think everyone was going to get hurt. It's kind of hard to predict everyone's getting hurt.
So I would love to do a study on this at some point. But so Kansas City went deep last year. They won the Super Bowl. 49ers went deep, lost the Super Bowl. They're 2 of the most injury-riddled teams. Is there a correlation between going deep in the playoffs and injuries the next season? And I would love to do some research on that, because I feel like there's been so many Niner injuries. And if you look at the Chiefs, you have Hollywood Brown, who didn't go to the postseason with them, so he doesn't count. But if you look at Rashee Rice in there, and if you look at other positions where they've had to trade, I wonder if there's benefit to cycling some of the bottom part of your roster from a Super Bowl to the next year because of just keeping people fresh. And I just wonder if there's a bigger injury concern.
That's something. I would think that continuing on your season playing very physical football and taking hits would absolutely affect your body's health. And people that get more downtime are healthier at the start of the season. That makes sense to me. It just tells me the Chiefs need to invest in a fleet of hyperbaric chambers and just like throw their players in there for a long time. Get them
The
back.
good news with the Chiefs is they have Patrick Mahomes, and as long as he's healthy, they're still a contender. And I think he's pretty good at staying out of the way of the big hit and putting himself too big at risk. Like, there's been a few times where his ankle or whatever, like, where the look on his face doesn't match him missing plays.
Yeah.
Like it should.
So, are you saying that the Chiefs are habitually playing with a Super Bowl hangover?
Well, I think it's a little bit different once you get those rings on night one, and there's nothing that the Niners get, and they're even more injury riddled and hurt and old and expensive. So even their quarterback's been hurt this year. So their quarterback their top two running backs, their wide receiver. I think Debo missed some time this year, if I'm not mistaken. I know Jennings has missed time this year. Pearsall we can't count because of why he missed time, and he also wasn't on the team last year, but he also missed time. They're I think Kittle missed a game as well. Like their left tackle Trent Williams is missing some time too.
Yeah, that is more sad personal news for him, though.
Yeah. But there's a lot going on with that team. And I have heard other media outlets question if it's time for the 49ers to rip the team down to the studs, so keep the cornerstone players and then move on from everybody else and rebuild this team from the ground up because it's getting old and expensive.
You mean the cornerstone players being like Brock Purdy?
Yeah, I mean, I know I threw out to you yesterday via text, like, does it make sense with Brock Purdy to let him play out the last year of his contract and then franchise tag him just to see how he does with less talent around him, like potentially less talent, I should say, around him. And if it's not good, they could move on like they moved on from Jimmy Garoppolo, and if it's good, they could franchise tag him. Like, I feel like there's no loss in that. Like, I get it, Brock Purdy feels like he deserves to get paid, but Brock Purdy was also the last pick in the draft, so there has to be some carryover from that as well. Like,
Well, I look at Brock Purdy like Tony Romo with the Cowboys.
mm-hmm.
I think they're both pretty good starters, and it's hard to find someone better. And it's extremely difficult to get a top quarterback in the league. There's only a handful that are truly top quarterbacks in the league. There's more that are potential top quarterbacks in the league, but not quite there. I think Purdy's probably right smack in the middle.
Yeah.
I think there's been a lot of bad quarterback play this year, and it's really hard for me to justify finding someone else. I think Purdy is still an upgrade over Garoppolo. I think Purdy's an upgrade over what Alex Smith was. So, with that said, I don't see how you massively improve in that position. And
Yeah,
certainly not going to be this season. And then do you think they're going to have two bad seasons in a row? Because I don't think that that is going to happen.
me either. I really don't know what they do. They're going to be one of the more interesting teams in the offseason, and it may behoove them to keep Shanahan out of the personnel decisions as well, because it does seem like he's gaining more and more power in that role, like as he gets more and more experience. And because we know how that ended up for Bill Belichick and the Patriots when he was the sole GM. He left that one with no talent. So,
The one thing I agree with the most is they need to get younger. Um,
yep.
I would keep Brock Purdy, but I would potentially move on from Debo and Kittle and bring in some young offensive linemen to turn the corner here because they need to get the push. Right now, they're not doing that much. Their run game has been pseudo effective, not great. I think Pearsall will take a leap next year, especially if Debo is gone or someone else is gone to pave the way for him. I think they still have Jennings under contract. I think that is a good guy to have around as well. Ayuk will be back next year, should be more on the same page. I think things will be better for him next year, but they need to get younger on the offensive trenches.
Yeah, in no way, shape, or form am I pitching to move on from Purdy this offseason because I don't think there is another option. So I believe that the 49ers should keep him, but I don't believe they should marry him right now. I believe that they should let him play out his deal because they always have the franchise tag at their disposal. I just don't think it's smart to offer him 40, 50, 60 million dollars. If he's willing to sign the $30 million deal right now, do it. But I don't think he's going to be willing to sign the $30 million deal. So,
Right now, Dak Prescott made everyone have to pony up 60 million per year. So
yeah.
I
But
think the lowest would be like 45 million per Brock, and I think that's something that they would consider.
yeah, but you have to understand that Prescott kind of had the Cowboys over a barrel with the dead cap. This kind of moved the dead cap along, so he could have held his bottom line pretty easily with that contract. I think Kirk Cousins could have named his number as well because he was a free agent. Like, people would have been calling and asking for his services. So he could have created a bidding war. I think Prescott could have created one as well. But as you said, I think Purdy's in the phylum of Prescott and Cousins as well. So I don't know. I would not give him that $60 million deal because I feel like that hamstrings the rest of your team and what you can pay to put around him. But that is just my opinion. They're going to have to rebuild that offensive line from scratch too, basically. I know there's a couple pieces they'll be able to keep, but Trent Williams, they got to find a new left tackle eventually.
Yeah. Well, someone else that I wouldn't have paid, Trevor Lawrence, out again, this time with a pretty rough looking concussion. So he's probably not coming back the rest of the year. Their season's over. A lot is said about the hit. I think the whole situation is destined to cause conflict and issues with the slide. I don't like the slide rule in the NFL because it encourages quarterbacks to push the envelope and get as far as they can before dropping. There's also they don't get penalized for faking. Defense is damned if they do, damned if they don't. I don't like the sideline stuff. I think both those need to be penalized. That's the only way to protect the quarterbacks if that's what they're trying to do. And I don't think that defensive players can react as fast as the Twitterverse thinks. It's not that easy. Like he's trying to stop a runner. He's not thinking about anything else and doesn't have time to register. By the time he's registering, the quarterback is right there. He's not registering. It looks like he's finally starting to drop. And I don't even think he meant to hit his head. I think he tried to go for the shoulder and his elbow, when he was going for the shoulder, his elbow ran into him. I don't think he meant to hit his head at all.
Let's
But
see a full demonstration.
he has he uh he has a history of doing dumb stuff, dumb aggressive things, and he got into the brawl afterwards when the Jaguars came after him. He kept it going rather than de-escalating or pulling himself out. He got suspended, and I understand why. I still think it should be a flag. If he didn't get involved in the brawl, I don't think he would have been ejected, or I don't think he should have been ejected if he didn't do that, but he did. Now he's facing a 3-week suspension, which could cost him $9 million if the appeal doesn't go through to shorten it. So I don't really feel sorry for him, but I am frustrated with how the league officiates it and handles that situation. The slide and the out of bounds thing, it needs to be changed, and they need to get rid of fakes so that defenders will actually lay off when someone does that.
So what's next, Alex? They got to give a fair catch signal when they're down.
I mean,
Are we
did
going
we
to
already
take
do that for kick returns? I mean, that is the conversation.
Are we
But
gonna take Are we gonna take away fake pump fakes as well? Like all fakes like gone because that is also a way that they get extra yards when they're running. They act like they're gonna throw the ball past the line of scrimmage. Like what are we talking with fakes here? Because you are making another judgment call here for referees to make, which you hate referees in this game. You've made it very clear that you do not want them making any more decisions, and yet here you are making them make another decision in the game of if he faked slid or not.
okay, well then let's remove the slide altogether. Now, remove the slide rule altogether. Quarterbacks no longer slide and surrender themselves. They're runners, they can get hit. So it's up to them to get down as quickly as possible.
So how would they give themselves up then if they don't slide?
Fetal position. Crawl on the ground.
Fetal position.
It's just frustrating.
It is.
I think defensively, because I played defense, and the way the rules are, defense is screwed. Like, they're screwed if they hit them, they're screwed if they don't hit them, they're screwed if it's a fake. Like, the defense is completely on the back foot, and there's no equal measure for the offense. And even Tom Brady says the offense needs to be held accountable for that to stop. So something has to be done. Either they remove the slide rule altogether, or they flag the offense for fakes. That's the only way to make it even.
Yeah, there's really no slide rule though, honestly. Like there is, but there isn't. It's like more unwritten. It's where the player starts to give themselves up, and the slide just is the action of giving themselves up. Like
No,
it's
because there's a difference between forward slide and feet slide.
well, that's what do you mean a forward slide? Like a dive?
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's like the slide is the act of giving yourself up. Like the dive is not the act of giving yourself up most of the time. But a player on a kickoff will sometimes just corral it and just go right down to the ground. Like it doesn't just happen with quarterbacks. There's defenders that are intercepting and they'll slide down so they can keep the ball in play and not score and potentially give the ball back to the other team. Like there's a lot of slides and not just quarterback slides that give up the play. Like running backs will do that to prevent themselves from going in the end zone.
The way it is right now is stupid. Maybe they just need to take a knee. Maybe they just need to have a knee ruled. You actually have to do it and no faking.
Yeah, you do. You say that until it's actually in. You can say that in concept, but when it's actually in use, like that's gonna
Why
look
don't
really
they just
dumb.
why don't they just run like a running back? Stop diving. 'Cause I feel like the diving aspect is the most dangerous because you're making yourself more vulnerable. Where why don't you run like Josh Allen and like plow people over or run towards the sideline or do what a running back would do in that situation? You'll probably be in a better spot.
Because then you turn into Tua and you try to start lowering your head and you'll end up on the ground like
I just want you to know, Jeff, I'm fairly consistent about this stuff, and
yeah.
I even defended Tua when you said he did the crown rule, and I'm like, the dude just knocked himself out. You're gonna you're gonna penalize him.
I,
He lowered his
I
crown,
would have laughed
but
if he
no,
would have got fined for that as well.
no, that would never have happened. And I don't think he actually did the crown, to be honest with you. But that's really hard to officiate. I don't think I've seen it really officiated since it came out.
Yeah, I mean it gets penalized the mid game, and then typically it's quiet with fines throughout the week. So, and
So
they don't typically release the fines anymore. So,
unless the player
and
does.
yeah, I don't see the fine on his transaction list on Spotrac. All right, one last injury, kind of quarterback, kind of running back, kind of tight end, kind of wide receiver. Taysom Hill, believed to have a torn ACL. We know it's a knee injury. I don't think they've officially released that it's a torn ACL, but out for the year, will need surgery, all that good stuff. I think Taysom has to be back next year just for contract reasons, but we know he's old. We know he's productive. So I don't know how much longer he can keep this up, especially now that his injuries are starting to pile up.
It's also very frustrating for fantasy purposes. So I don't want him injured, but I want them to stop doing this gimmick because it's not working for them. It seems like it's working, but they're not really getting wins. So they need to have a different offense. But they use Taysom as a way to manipulate their cap, and now they're stuck with them because they can't really cut him.
No, I completely agree with that. I also see I don't know where the Saints are headed here. We just talked about this division being very winnable offline, and the Saints just at some point, as soon as Kamara is off the team, will probably bottom out. Because there's no running back that can replace Alvin Kamara as much as they think that a Kendre Miller or another running back can. And at that point, the person pulling the heavy wagon behind them is going to be gone, and it's going to be time for a complete rebuild like we were just talking about with the 49ers and get younger, cheaper players and kind of build from the ground up again. And they will have a brand new head coach to do that as well.
I did not realize Taysom Hill was that old. I still thought he was young. Like he's older than I am.
Yeah.
So he's old.
Yeah, I told you he's old and expensive. He's valuable when he's out there. He's just not going to be out there as much anymore because of his age, and the injuries will start to catch up to him with how he plays. And yes, the torn ACL is confirmed now that I'm looking, but he's 34. He'll be 35 next season. And yeah, like I don't know how much more meat on the bone here for the Saints that Taysom Hill has.
I don't know how much meat on the bone the New Orleans offense has because it's pretty, outside of Kamara, it's pretty miserable. All right,
Absolutely.
let's get into the games. So let's hit the Thanksgiving trio here, and they seemed fairly predictable beforehand. And sure enough, we called all three of those games. Both of us got them right. So Detroit versus the Bears versus the Chicago Bears. Jeff, why don't you break this one down?
So the Bears should have won or at least extended this game, but they did lose 2020 in regulation. And this was what we were alluding to earlier with Matt Eberflus. There was a gross management of the clock by both Eberflus and Caleb Williams, which is unacceptable. I am willing to give Caleb Williams a bit of a pass because he is a rookie, and that's kind of where the head coach should come into play here and assist his rookie quarterback. Also, we have to remember that the coaches are in the quarterback's ear up until I think it's 10 seconds on the play clock. So it's not like he doesn't have another set of ears and eyes looking at things for him as well. But other than that gross mismanagement of the clock at the end of the game, Williams did have a great day overall, and he continues to feed DJ Moore with this new offensive coordinator, and I do expect that to continue right now. But so DJ Moore is a must start in fantasy going forward. He has hit every over bet since the new offensive coordinator has come in as well for you bettors out there. Speaking of usable wide receivers, Keenan Allen appears to be usable again. This is kind of the relationship that I expected with Caleb Williams and Keenan Allen coming into the year. I think Keenan Allen battled an injury very early on, and I think that hampered some of the injury and the progression. But Keenan Allen is very usable in fantasy again, too, especially as we hit by Mageddon. And we will also hit the fantasy playoffs very soon. And then the last thing I will say, and I need to say that I was right here. I know I say I'm wrong on plenty of things. I agreed that Trevor Lawrence shouldn't have gotten paid. I almost feel like that was a makeup for having to deal with Urban Meyer. But Montgomery leads the way with 21 carries, and I called it being a Monty game since he had the long week. He had a very light game the week before going into a short week. And Gibbs had the heavy game going into the short week and had a much lighter game on the Thursday night, which I am noticing is a pattern with teams going forward. So
yeah, you did call Montgomery, even though they were talking up before the game that he was banged up. They weren't sure how good he was to go. They still gave him 24 touches total in this game. So I guess he was fine.
Yeah, I think sometimes teams play that up a little bit, but we both picked Detroit and we both got it right. So I know we lucked out on that one because of Chicago's mismanagement of the clock.
Yeah. Jameer Gibbs scared me this week because he had a social media post where he had the backboard of all the play terminology behind him and he posted it without blurring anything out. And I thought potentially they're going to have some consequences, but it looks like it's fine and he's probably still going to be just good this week.
Yeah, Campbell didn't know about that until the post-game press conference, right?
I saw it.
So we'll see if there's any recourse going into this upcoming week, but I don't think you can leave that unpunished. I also don't think that in a divisional matchup with Green Bay, maybe you ride him 25 times tonight and just have him take a beating. I don't know how you punish a guy and also get some usage out of him as well. So maybe that's the right call. Or they run Montgomery until they realize they hit a wall and then they put Gibbs in. But there has to be some sort of recourse because you can't be that stupid.
Yeah. But I thought Chicago did a really good job staying in this game. And if it wasn't for that last drive, the way that they handled that last drive, they could have won this game 100%. This is so stupid. Wasting 36 seconds and turning it into one play because they didn't hurry up or call a timeout or do anything, literally.
Yeah, and the coaches have to be in Caleb's ear because they have the communication system in the helmet, and they got to be helping him along on this, and they got to be the ones calling the timeout if Caleb's not. Even if they want to take one bomb.
Really big on Caleb Williams like everyone else was before the draft. I think that if you want Caleb to work, you have to have a really bright offensive coach to work with him because Lincoln Riley and USC, like that team does worse every year. And the quarterbacks, you got the best quarterbacks that he's really had are Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray, and I'm not super high on either one. And Cliff Kingsbury, yeah, I think he coached Patrick Mahomes for a period of time, so he's got that upside, and he could be the next coach there. He already worked with Caleb Williams at USC, so that would be something. Ben Johnson would be completely different and might be what Caleb actually needs. We'll see.
Absolutely.
But
I think he's performing just fine though. I will say that. As a rookie year with a defensive head coach and an offensive coordinator that got fired midway through, I think he needs to play more within structure, and he needs a coach that'll make him play within structure a little bit more.
I don't think he's a structured kind of quarterback, but we'll see.
Well, people said that about Josh Allen. I'm not comparing Caleb Williams to Josh Allen, but I think Josh Allen has gotten a lot more structured in the way that he's playing now. So I think it's possible, but
I
we
think
will
Josh
see.
Allen is the structure of that offense.
Well, I think he would run a lot more if he was allowed to, but they finally have figured out that they need to save that for January.
All right. Well, let's move on to the NFC East. Giants at the Cowboys. Both these teams started backup quarterbacks for their starting role here. But, Jeff, why don't you break down this game?
Yeah, this was not the ideal game, but it was actually a good game. The Cowboys did win 27-20. So death, taxes, and the Cowboys being the Giants are like three knowns in American culture. And something's still not quite right with the New York Giants offense. I don't know what it is because they actually have a good running back. They actually have a good wide receiver one, and something's not clicking there. I believe they lost Theo Johnson for the rest of the season as well, who is going to be a sneaky sleeper tight end for next year, in my opinion, especially if they have a good quarterback back there throwing, unless Darren Waller unretires and comes back to the Giants next year, which would drive Alex nuts. But Cooper Rush and Rico Dowdle do just enough for the Cowboys to win the game. But my question for you here, Alex, is CeeDee Lamb even startable right now as we enter the home stretch? This should be the last week of the regular season for fantasy, and was it enter the playoffs?
Borderline, in my opinion. I think he's downgraded to a wide receiver 3. I don't think that you should view him as a star number 1 anymore for this season. So I would just treat it that way and keep an eye if they want to shut him down, protect him the rest of the way. So that's all I'd say about him. And if that's the case, they do that, then Turbin and Tolbert would be the ones that I would look at to try to play.
Yeah, I just don't know what that looks like going forward. Dallas is one of those other teams. So we talked about San Francisco, New Orleans, and Dallas. There could be teams that have turnstiles this upcoming offseason, and they probably should at this point. But we both picked Dallas. We both got them right. Anything that I missed in this particular game?
No, you even hit the Theo Johnson stuff. So I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I'm glad that he's available to be a sleeper next year. I guess that's the best way to put it. I'm not glad for the injury, but where the injury happened and the team that he's on, he's produced just enough to be a sleeper going into next year. And I like those later round tight ends anyways, so
I'm glad I locked him up in the draft this past offseason.
yeah. So let's move on to a game that wasn't as good, but showed a lot of firepower. We have the Dolphins at the Packers. We both picked the Packers. We both got them right. Alex, do you want to break down this game for us?
I mean, not really, but I will. This was in the snow, or it was a cold game anyway, and it was supposed to be a run-heavy game. That didn't seem to happen. The Dolphins can't get any run game going at all of late, I feel like. Raheem Mostert had more yards. Devon Achane had more carries, but it was 5 for 7. Jonnu Smith looking like an elite tight end this year in fantasy. 10 catches, 113 yards. Unfortunately, no touchdown. Tyreek Hill actually showed up for 83 yards and a touchdown. Achane did get receiving work, getting a touchdown and 56 yards through the air. Tua, 365 passer yards and 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. I don't think Tua was the problem this go around, but throwing it 46 times probably was. On Green Bay's side, Jordan Love played well, and they didn't have to throw nearly as much. Josh Jacobs, I don't think played very well in this matchup, on the ground at least. Through the air, 74 yards through the air. Tucker Kraft looks like a top tight end again. So he looks like a tight end one for teams out there. Oh, can't forget about Jaden Reed's 2 touchdowns and just 24 yards. But he had 2 touchdowns. Watson still a deep threat. But overall, back and forth, the Packers had this game locked down from the beginning. Miami was playing catch up the whole game. It really is an issue with Miami and the cold weather. I don't know how they're ever going to fix that at this point. I am not a big fan of McDaniels as a coach. I think anyone named McDaniels should not be a head coach in the league. The team's just not prepared, it seems like. It seems like they're never ready to go, and they're always playing catch up, or they're always the second half team. And I don't like that about Miami. Green Bay, however, most likely still they're going to make the playoffs, and they're a better coach. So, what did you make of this matchup? What were your takeaways?
So I completely agree with you. I think it's unacceptable that Jaden Reed gets 7 touches in a game, but blows up for 17.5 fantasy points. Like, I mean, the guy's a stud, and why are we the only ones that see it? Like, I don't get it at all, because all he does is score and produce when he's actually used.
Because,
What
Jeff, they have 4 wide receiver 1s, as the coach said months ago, and they insist on doing it.
Yeah, I mean, but also in the same breath, we have Jaden Reed, who is wide receiver 8 in fantasy this year. So he is a top 10 fantasy wide receiver, which I know going into the year, I think my very first posting had him at like 17, maybe 13. And I was like, this is way too high. I need to lower him a little bit. Now he's 8. So I feel a little bit justified in my original thought and opinion, but using him has not been fun either. I will very much cop into that. I think he's a guy that you have to put in your lineup every week, and take the good weeks with the bad weeks. Yeah, Cortland Sutton's a top 7 wide receiver right now as well. Just an interesting thought here. So I think Miami is going to be eliminated from the playoffs in the next couple of weeks. I don't know what changes they'll make or do, but I think McDaniel has a leg to stand on, that he was missing Tua for 4 games this year. And I do believe that he'll be back next year. I believe most of the core will be back next year. And they'll pray that they don't get any cold games in November and December, because that just feels like Miami's MO. I don't really care who is there, coach, quarterback, etc. But they just have this MO of not being able to perform in the cold.
All right. Well, the next week is in Miami, so we'll see how that goes. We have
And
the
they'll win.
Raiders
Watch.
Raiders at the Chiefs. To me, this was kind of a snooze fest Friday matchup on, I think it was Amazon. So Black Friday matchup. The Raiders surprisingly kept in this game, but never really felt like they were going to win, especially knowing it's against the Chiefs. Aiden O'Connell played reasonably well. 0 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, 340 yards off of 35 attempts. Kind of outdid Patrick Mahomes in this one. Isaiah Pacheco was back. Not quite fantasy relevant this one, or Kareem Hunt. So Pacheco's back. Kareem Hunt, I'm not really looking at going forward. Hopkins had a good game, 90 yards with 4 catches. Kelsey at least did enough in PPR and half PPR to make fantasy owners happy, but Noah Gray is just looming there, vulturing targets from him. Brock Bowers had a heck of a game this one. 10 catches, 140 yards, and a touchdown. Jacoby Myers, 97 yards off 6 catches. Trey Tucker had the one big 58-yard touchdown catch, but he is an afterthought in this offense going forward, I feel like, at this moment. The big thing for the Raiders is Sincere McCormick is emerging as a potential starter for the rest of the year, at least, and maybe into next year. So I assume most people have done their waivers by now, but if he's still out there, you can speculatively add him and see if he helps fill out a roster spot for you the rest of the year.
Absolutely. I completely agree. But what did you make of that botched last play by the Raiders that the Chiefs technically should have 3 losses now? They should have lost to Denver, they should have lost to the Raiders, and they did lose to the Bills. What do you make of the Chiefs right now moving forward?
They're a very vulnerable team, in my opinion. I agree with you that it seems like the Raiders should have won this. They had 3 missed field goals as well. Like, that's insane to me. But the Chiefs, they have not looked good at all this year. They're starting to get all their players back. I know that they're going to get hot at the playoffs. But the Bengals might not, Bengals, excuse me, Bengals aren't going to make it. The Buffalo Bills might be the only team who can knock them out before the Super Bowl. I don't know if the Ravens can do it. The Ravens have done pretty poor of late, getting far in the playoffs. Bengals, like I said, aren't going to make it. I don't know if there's another strong team in the AFC right now besides those teams. So it looks like the Chiefs are still probably going to make it unless Buffalo says something.
Yeah, I do think Buffalo is probably producing. We'll get to Buffalo in a little bit, but I think they're producing as one of the best teams in football right now. I think Detroit's up there, but I think Philly's even past Detroit mostly as well. But we have probably the final 4 teams is what we've just listed right there, unless the playoff bracket doesn't live up to that. But I did see Hollywood Brown. I did see him training right now for the playoffs. So it does seem like the Chiefs will get Hollywood Brown back for the playoffs, which will be big. I don't know if it'll be a little too little too late, but we'll see. And the Chiefs better hope they don't slip up one of these games because the Bills will pass them due to the tiebreaker of defeating them. Only saving grace the Chiefs have is that the Bills play the Lions in Detroit in a couple of weeks.
Well, we are 4 games in. We are 4 for 4, and now we are going 5 for 5 with the Cardinals at the Vikings. We both picked Minnesota. Minnesota pulled off a very close game. We almost could have been wrong with this one, but Minnesota did pull it off 23-22. Jeff, what did you make of this matchup?
So teams, even good teams, are going to win games like this in the season. So Minnesota, I'm glad they were able to pull it out at the end. Darnold looked good towards the end of the game. His stats looked really good as well. Murray has had an up and down day on the road, so I don't know if that's like a road thing or if that's a Murray thing. We'll find out as we continue to watch, but Trey McBride is his lead weapon. I know he split targets with Marvin Harrison Jr., but it doesn't seem like they're fully on the same page yet. I think McBride went like 12 for 12, like 12 targets, 12 catches, or something really close to ridiculous like that. But Jones and Akers split the backfield work. I'm a little concerned about Aaron Jones being used so little. He did score the receiving touchdown, but I also want to make a note here that Daniel Jones was signed last week, but he was signed to the practice squad. So I had a thought on this. Like, let's say a team that's in the playoff hunt loses their starting quarterback, Daniel Jones could easily decide to go sign with that team as well. So he's not locked into Minnesota, but he's in a system right now. But as a practice squad member, he could be poached at any time, and the other team doesn't have a right to match him. He could just be poached. Like, let's say you're Jared Goff and you get hurt and they need a quarterback. Daniel Jones could easily go sign with the Lions and be their quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, he could have done that, and he decided to go with Minnesota for now, but still, practice squad, he can be scooped up. So we'll see how that tracks going forward. But I don't really have much to say on this one. It wasn't that good of an offensive matchup, but it was a very tight, close game.
Yeah, I think that's the theme here. Like NFL games are typically decided by one score or less. And that is no exception to the next game here of the Texans at the Jaguars. Alex, I know we talked a little about Lawrence being knocked out of the game. But the Texans did win 23-20. We both picked Houston. We both won. Mac Jones put down some good tape and almost completed the comeback. But as I have said previously, the way for Texans to win is Mixon rushing the ball. He got over 100 yards. They get the win. I think the only way to stop the Texans is stop Mixon. Like, that's my theory on the Texans right now. And this kind of proved true to that. And then Nico Collins takes the target lead over Diggs, and that racks up the win for you on our bet in the offseason here. When you have a 2-1 lead on me right now on the bets. And I will say the one good thing about the Jaguars is Brian Thomas Jr. He's having a great rookie year, and he's a guy that I look forward to owning in 3 out of my 4 dynasty leagues over the next 4 to 5 seasons. But Alex, how worried were you in this game here with the Texans and the Jaguars? Was there any panic in this game?
What? No. Was there panic? No. What I will say, Jeff, you missed a golden opportunity to say the Texans knock out the Jaguars. That would have been a perfect line for how. But okay.
You
Anyway,
did. You knocked out the quarterback.
yeah, that was the joke. I'm trying to
Still not
think
happy
here.
about it, though. No
I don't think
joking
any,
mood
I
here.
don't think anybody is happy about it, but I wasn't really worried per se. I was just frustrated that the Texans seem to be getting worse. They're not getting better. They're getting worse as the year goes on. I mean, I'm glad the bye week is happening now. Maybe they can figure some things out. But what I really want right now is to consider changing offensive coordinators because they can't figure out the offensive line. They can't get this offense moving. And I'm glad we have Mixon and I'm glad we had Nico Collins because they're the only ones keeping the chains moving. So something needs to be done. I don't know what else to do for the Texans at this point. Like they're not going to make a coaching change right now, but in the offseason, they need to consider a coaching change and spending every one of their draft picks on offensive linemen.
Yeah, and I think I discussed this last year when everyone was very high on CJ Stroud and what Bobby Slowick did year 1. I was very clear that Bobby Slowick needs to develop a second pitch, and he was not been able to develop the second pitch. And in my head, I think that he was a head coaching candidate last year, and I think he ruined his bubble, his spot to
Yeah.
getting a head coaching job. That's why you
Yeah.
don't wait.
Well, last year, to be fair, I think he needs to have 3 pitches because last year, all they could do was pass the ball. This year, they can pass the ball and they can run the ball, but it's very fragile. So if he can improve on the offensive line and the offense can take another step forward next season, he can get back into the head coaching realm. But right now, it's a hyper fragile offense, and it's going to rely heavily on the defense to keep them in games.
No, I agree.
But
Anything else on that?
Shout out to Parker Washington for having
He's
a
your
hundred
boy.
yard game and touchdown.
He's your boy.
I think that they probably move on from Gabe Davis and Christian Kirk, and it'll be Brian Thomas and Parker Washington with Evan Ingram, maybe Devin Duvernay, maybe a new person next year that they draft as well. So I think that those should be the guys that they roll with, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I don't know if they can get out of the Gabe Davis of it all.
Yeah, I mean they might keep him. He's the most manageable, but Christian
Kirk,
Kirk,
there you
it's
go.
it's not going to work going forward. I think that they have enough receiving options as is right now anyway. They can
Yeah,
still add someone in the draft if they want to, but
for sure. Okay. So we can hop over to the next game here. It's the Colts at the Patriots. Alex, I'll let you break down this game because I know you got it right and I got it wrong. And Richardson was big late.
I thought you did pick the Colts, but I guess not. Man, it looked like you're going to be right at the beginning of the game. I know the Colts got the first score, I believe, and then from there, Richardson threw a ball too high, got picked off, it got tipped and picked off, and it's kind of a back and forth game. I think we both agree that May played a little better than Richardson in this one. Richardson got more touchdowns, but had more turnovers. Jonathan Taylor, they finally took your advice and gave him 25 carries, relied on him a little bit more. Michael Pittman was the lead guy again with Josh Downs out this week. Hunter Henry had a good week. You could have had 2 touchdowns in this game. It was just off a little bit. I think Kayshon Boutte is the number one receiver outside of Hunter Henry for Drake May. It seems like every week he's having the most targets, I feel like. Ramondre Stevenson had an okay game. I was hoping for more, hoping for a touchdown. That went to Antonio Gibson, who also had a decent game himself. To me, it's Hunter Henry in the running back position, along with Drake May for the Patriots offense. Ultimately, Colts came from behind at the end of the fourth quarter and snuck out the victory 25-24.
Yeah, I think the only thing here that's a big takeaway for me is that New England's primary focus and only focus this year should be getting Drake May a wide receiver one.
Yes, and offensive line.
That's it. Yeah,
Yep.
I think he's even functioning well within the offensive line that he has because I think better quarterback play, quicker release could could improve the offensive line as well. But I think he had like 6 incompletions.
And it's they need a pass rusher because they traded their good one to Atlanta earlier in the season. So, and it's a good year for pass rushers. So they might be able to get one the second or third. But offensive line, number one wide receiver, pass rusher, and then the Patriots are an entirely different team.
Absolutely. All right, ready to hop to the next one?
Let's do it.
Chargers at the Falcons. Chargers went on the road 17-13. Cousins has 4 interceptions, which was the difference in this game. Gus Edwards is a very mid replacement for Dobbins. Chargers have to do better at running back, and I don't know if they could go find something off the waiver wire. I don't know if it's poaching someone off of practice squad. Like, they have to get better at running back, especially if they want to win a playoff game this year. I don't think that they're a Super Bowl contender. I mean, obviously with Herbert, anything is possible. But Bijan is the workhorse, and that's the way that it's went as the season has went on. I think Tyler Algier is still ownable and rosterable in case anything ever happened to Bijan Robinson, he misses a game or anything like that. And then Lad McConkey continues his great rookie season, which you totally called on that. I think you even had him as your rookie of the year. I don't think he's going to win rookie of the year. I think I would actually give it to Brock Bowers over him at this exact moment, but
It's gonna go to either Jaden Daniels or Bo Nix at this point.
right. But I think Brock Bowers is still the best receiving rookie out there right now, and I think that's just a product of his environment, not the fact that he's a better talent.
Well, they both were from the same college. I liked both of them a lot.
Yeah, and Kyle Pitts, 0 catches on 2 targets. Complete. I am disgusted with Kyle Pitts. So that's all I'll say about that. We both picked the
You've been
Chargers. We
out
both
on
got it
him.
right.
You've been out on him like all season. You're done with him.
Yeah, I am. I actually activated his rookie option in one of our dynasty leagues, but yeah, I don't believe that he's worth a roster spot moving forward, like, because he can do this. You need consistency.
Yeah. Well, Quentin Johnson had another forgettable week. Jeff, are you back to earth on him, or are you still pretty high on Quentin Johnson?
I still think he's like a top 50 wide receiver, but I think that's about it.
Couldn't even go there. Like top 96, maybe, because that's your third wide receiver, right? The top 3.
Yeah.
He's a situational deep threat. He is of the same vein as a Gabriel Davis, of the same vein as a Will Fuller, although Will Fuller was better already at this point. That's all he is. He's randomly going to get open. He's going to get an easy ball thrown at him. He's going to catch it, make a big play, maybe get a touchdown, and that's just going to be his MO. Like he's not going to get fed the ball. I don't think Herbert really trusts him on tough catches. It's only Lad McConkey. However, Lad McConkey may not play next week because he is dealing with a minor knee injury. That is something to keep in mind for the next matchup. You pretty much covered most of it. I think We're going to see if Kamani Vidal is anything going forward. I don't know if I trust it. I don't know if I trust the Chargers offense without a legitimate running back there.
Yeah, which you're calling J.K. Dobbins a legitimate running back. Let's notate that down, everybody.
He's a legitimate running back when he's on the field, but he's often injured.
Yes,
That's the big problem with him. He has the talent, but he's often injured every season.
absolutely. All right. Let's move on here to the Steelers at the Bengals. And Russell Wilson carries the team with 400 plus passing yards. Steelers win 44-38. And Joe Burrow is almost as good as Russell Wilson in this game, but he needs to be perfect to win right now. That's how bad the Bengals defense is at this exact moment. And as I called the other day, now that it's not a short week anymore, this was going to be a Najee game, because that the previous game was a Warren game where they were trying to rest up Najee on a short week. So we are getting a pattern here that the lion's share of the workload goes to the main running back. The backup's going to get a lot more carries in that Thursday night game. So that is something that is happening. Chase Brown had a good game as well, so he does seem like he's entrenched in the starter there. Chase, Higgins, and Pickens all score and produce in this game, and Freiermuth is a usable tight end with Wilson. How we both called Pittsburgh in this game because we said Pittsburgh on extra long rest was going to win this game. That's exactly what happened, and so now Pittsburgh on 7 days rest is a coin flip. Short rest, they lose. Long rest, they win. Alex, I think we have Pittsburgh figured out right now under the Tomlin tree. Anything I missed?
Another reason why I picked Pittsburgh is the way since he's been playing this year, Joe Burrow playing out of his mind and they still find a way to lose. And that turned out to be true again. But man, I don't know if we've ever thought an AFC North matchup would have over 80 points in it. Like that's not the typical MO of this division, and it was one heck of a game.
Absolutely.
All right.
So real quick before we move on to the next game, what do you make of the Russell Wilson move so far?
It's been remarkably good, and I'll have to give you kudos because I think Russell may be making his way as the top 14 fantasy quarterbacks pretty soon. So
He's
it has
12 on
been
points per game right now.
wow. It's been shockingly good how long that stayed, and Arthur Smith is looking like a pseudo competent offensive coordinator, which is shocking as well. We'll see if that can hold up the last few weeks of the regular season. But Jeff, it's looking like you're right on this one. I'll have to give you some kudos.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And I believe Russ is playing himself into a new contract right now and maybe even
Yeah,
back
I
with the
would think so.
Steelers.
Yeah, Steelers may have found their Big Ben replacement with
Well,
little Russ.
I think he fits. I think he fits really well with Mike Tomlin as well. I think there's enough conservative nature of Tomlin and Russ wanting to gun it that like when they combine, there's enough.
Yeah. I think this offense is finally moving to levels that we had hoped for.
Yeah, we can move on to Russ's old team here, the Seattle Seahawks at the Jets. We both picked the Jets. We both lost this game. We should have won this game. Rodgers is the one that really cost the Jets this game through an interception when he shouldn't have. And the
I'm sure it was the
Seahawks win.
receiver's fault.
Yeah.
I'm
The
sure it's definitely
Seahawks
the
win
receiver's fault.
26-21. I get what you're saying, but you also understand that it's always somebody else's fault than Rodgers at this point. And I don't think Rodgers has it anymore. It's time for them to pull down everything that they have and rebuild as well, unfortunately. Maybe Rex Ryan is right. Maybe Rex Ryan is the only bonehead that would accept that job and rebuild it. So
Yeah. Rodgers needs to be done. He's not the same. I don't like how this offense is. Devonta Adams doesn't look that great, even getting a touchdown in this game. He doesn't look great to me. They can't get Brees Hall going. The only thing they have going for them is that their defense is still semi-competent, but they don't look nearly as good without Salah there. But on the other hand, I don't think Seattle's that good of a team either. And it's so frustrating having Charbonnet be the one trying to punch in the short yardage goal line attempts when They have Kenneth Walker, or like even my wife when she was watching it with me, she's like, they're running here. Like, why are they running up the middle? And it gets stuffed, and they're doing the exact same play again, stuffed again. Like if she's predicting it, I don't know how these offensive coordinators are making these decisions. They're so freaking predictable. But this was an ugly, ugly game that didn't produce that much fantasy wise. And we hate those, don't we, Jeff?
We do. And yeah, it wasn't a fun game. Brees Hall looked like he took a little bit of backseat early, and it was nice to see him kind of reclaim it. But they did get Isaiah Davis, I believe that's his name, a few carries as well. So I don't know what even the Jets are thinking at running back. I mean, Brees Hall is a name that they could dangle out there and probably recoup a lot of picks in the offseason, but we will see. There's a few running back needy teams. I could see the 49ers like, oh
I
my
was
God, a
just
Christian
thinking that.
McCaffrey replacement.
A second one? Okay. All right. Although I think they can make do with Garindo and when Mason comes back, him as well. Okay, so we both got this one wrong. We'll blame it on Rogers because he likes to blame other people too. So we'll do that. That's my first one wrong, your second one wrong thus far, but it'll even out with this next one. The Titans at the Commanders. I went a little crazy and picked the Titans, and Commanders obviously won big in this one, and I think it was apparent to me early on, especially when Brian Robinson Jr. had that big run for a touchdown. I was like, and Washington's gonna win this one, and they never they never looked back.
No.
Levis played decent. That got to a point where I thought it might be competitive, and then Washington pulled ahead again. So Levis, no turnovers in this one, 2 touchdowns. He had 37 attempts. The running backs for Tennessee only had 9 rushes, which is not good for fantasy. They couldn't play balance. Brian Robinson Jr. and Chris Rodriguez Jr. both had great games. 103 yards and a touchdown for Robinson, 94 yards and a touchdown for Rodriguez. Jaden Daniels had 4 touchdowns on the day, 1 on the ground, 3 in the air. Westbrook and Kine has continued his touchdown streak with the Titans. He looks like he's a solid number 2 for Calvin Ridley. Ever since Hopkins got traded, he's looking like Westbrook and Kine is going to get a contract extension, hopefully, with them soon. Terry McLaurin got 2 touchdowns and 73 yards. Zach Ertz got that touchdown at the end of the game. Washington's offense is still rolling. It's kind of fighting against Cliff Kingsbury's MO of collapsing in the second half of the year. So he's battling against that. The Titans are going back to irrelevance again after looking like they were going to be decent at the end of the year. But good for Washington. Jeff, you got this one right. We're now even at this
We
point.
are even, Steven. Do you think Chris Rodriguez will be a thing? I know he spent most of the year on the practice squad. Is he the direct backup now?
Well, with Eckler likely out, I would think so, yeah.
Yeah, he's on IR, so he'll miss 4 games. So that pretty much covers the fantasy playoffs. I know that was a late last minute addition, but they thought he's still experiencing concussion symptoms, so I think he'll be out for a bit. But
All right.
yeah, I thought Washington had the firepower to turn it around. They now head into their bye week with a victory, so hopefully Kingsbury can switch some things up during the bye week. We can get the over the hill of Cliff Kingsbury, over the hill Cliff.
Over the cliff with the K. All
Yep.
right. All right. Another team that has a lot of over the hill players. We have the Rams at the Saints. We both went the Rams on this one. Rams won 21-14, keeping their playoff hopes alive for a little bit. We'll see how that goes, especially next week's matchup. But finally, leaning on Kyron Williams, I think we both agree that that should be the MO going forward and not so much on Stafford. Cooper Kupp kind of irrelevant this week. Puka Nakua is the one that got a touchdown and 56 yards. Demarcus Robinson got a touchdown as well, making him pseudo-relevant on a weekly basis. Marcus Valdez-Scantling for the Saints continues to put up fantasy points on just a couple targets each week. He's someone that you have to seriously consider starting probably for the rest of the year, especially with Taysom Hill out. I would expect him to become more of a focal point, as well as Jawan Johnson and Foster Moreau. But Saints are continuing to fizzle this season when they should have been sizzling. It's looking to me like the Rams are going to be at the edge of playoffs and the Bucks are going to win the NFC South based off of how this is going. What do you think of this matchup, Jeff? And what do you think about that?
So I think that the Rams are going to win I don't know who's going to win the West right now, actually. Saints are pretty much toast in the South. And the only good thing about the Saints, as I mentioned, is having Kamara. So I don't really know. Is that a good answer?
Yeah, sure. You're supposed to be the expert, though, Jeff.
I am the expert, but the division that I know the least about is the West. And I think the Saints are eliminated, so it leaves the Buccaneers and the Falcons in the South. Right now, I think the Seahawks are leading the West. You know, the team that I said was going to make the playoffs, and you were like, no, they're going to be a little bit worse this year.
I think at this point, the Cardinals are the most likely to win the West, which I have a hard time even saying, but they're all still pretty neck and neck. It just depends on the Rams and Niners how they do the rest of the season.
Yeah, do we need to do another mock-up of the postseason? Do we need to do another playoff machine?
We can. We absolutely can.
I have been playing with that every week, but it takes too long right now because there's still 5 or 6 weeks left in the season. But other than that, so I think as far as the Rams, you have to lean on the run game and then lean on Puka and Cup as well. I think that the Rams still have an outside shot at a playoff game, but we will see.
Well, they have to go through Buffalo next week.
Yeah, but I think the Rams do play better on the road. I will say that. I think that LA stadium is not a home field advantage for the Charger or the Rams right now. I don't know why. Can't explain it, but I feel like they play better on the road than they do at home.
Okay, so we both got that one right. We both got this next one right. The Buccaneers at Panthers. Buccaneers won, but your Panthers put up quite the fight, Jeff. You want to break this one down?
So the Panthers lose another close one, which I'm totally okay with because it helps their draft pick going into this upcoming year. But I will say the Panthers are really close to breaking out, and I don't know if it'll be this year, but they're in a spot where you could see them start to rip off a few wins. I guess I'm okay with that messing up their draft spot. I've heard that there's roughly 12 to 15 actual first rounders this year. So as long as they don't fall out of the top 15 picks, then we'll be good there. Chuba Hubbard lost a fumble, which did cost Carolina a shot at the win in overtime. Will Hubbard lose work because of this? Potentially, because Jonathan Brooks does appear to be gaining some momentum as well. Thielen looked really good. He should have had one of his touchdowns were called incomplete. That was an actual touchdown in the end zone. He had both his knee and his elbow hit with the catch, but there's still ruled no touchdown, which makes Bryce Young look like an actual NFL quarterback. As far as the Bucs side of the ball, Bucky Irving, I guess he's a very fitting running back for the Buccaneers. Bucky Bucks.
Yep.
Had 25 carries. He is the lead back right now. He's a little banged up currently as well, but he also was a guy that they ran right into the ground even though he is banged up. Mike Evans has a great day as well. The Bucs if the Bucs are going to be a playoff contender here, they do need a second weapon to step up. I don't know if it's Cade Otton. I don't know if it's McMillan. I don't know if it's Palmer. Shepard. Someone's got to step up and be a second weapon for Baker Mayfield, though, in order for them to make a playoff run.
Wouldn't it be a third weapon if Bucky Irving's one of the top 2 weapons too?
Yeah, I meant receiving wise. I know Bucky Irving can catch the ball, but they're missing that Chris Godwin opposite Mike Evans right now.
Maybe they should put Rashad White out wide. Put him as a slot receiver or something.
This would be a scary team if they had Chris Godwin still.
Do you think in redrafts that Jonathan Brooks is droppable? Interesting.
Because I did ponder if that fumble that basically cost the Panthers the game or a shot at taking the lead in overtime that Hubbard had would have cost Hubbard some playing time. And I think down the stretch, it could be Jonathan Brooks getting some time here. What do you think about that?
Well, the way I think about it, they just gave Hubbard some money. They drafted Jonathan Brooks to be a long-term running back. He entered the league with a college injury. They probably want to ease him in, and they don't want to make his knee worse. So I would think they'd ride Chuba and they'd have Jonathan Brooks as the backup and ease him into the league. I expect, although Young is playing better and the offense is playing a little better, I expect they're going to be behind a lot and they're going to have to pass more. So my thought is Brooks is the better dynasty hold than a redraft. And if you're desperate because it's, by Mageddon this week, you might consider dropping him in a redraft league to pick up somebody, unless you want to take the L.
Yeah, I think you're right. They also re-signed Hubbard, which means that it seems like they want them to be a tandem for years to come. So I don't know if we start to see some of that tandemism.
Fandomism.
Yeah. New word. All right. So, anything else on this game? We both picked Tampa and we both won.
I think that's it for me.
All right. We got the final 3 games here, and they're all decent games for different reasons. The first one was the Eagles at the Ravens. And surprisingly here, Justin Tucker costs the Ravens a win as they fall to Philly 24-19. I think he missed 3 kicks in this game.
He
So
missed 2 field goals and an extra point.
Yep. So that is what, 7 points, and that would have been enough to get the dub. And what do they do with Justin Tucker? I know you're about to cut into there.
So he's missed 2 extra points this year, and I'm trying to see how many field goals he missed this year. He's not been good. He's missed 8 field goals. So out of 27 attempts, he's only made 19. He's not been his usual self. It looks like he has now been hit by Father Time. I don't think that's the only reason why they lost. Derrick Henry couldn't really get that much push against the physical Eagles front. And I don't think Zay Flowers was as involved as I would have hoped the Ravens to employ. I don't think that they have much firepower there because it's Flowers, it's Andrews, and Likely as receivers. Bateman, I think, got hurt in this game. I think Bateman's out for the year potentially after this game. And we haven't seen anything from Deontay Johnson. Anything at all. It's crickets. So I don't know if the Ravens are a serious contender. I mean, for a team that has one of the leading candidates for MVP, they don't seem to be a particularly lethal offense right now. And their defense is pretty poor. I mean, it's getting a little bit better, but it's not there. They're going to be a team that cruises into the playoffs and then gets beat by the Chiefs or by the Bills and knocked out early. I don't know what to do with the Ravens, but the Eagles played about how I thought the Eagles would play. I thought they would get the win. They did. To me, the Eagles' defense was the X factor in this matchup.
Yeah, so the Ravens have deep playoff aspirations, and Justin Tucker, they need to take a hard look at their kicking spot. And I've always said once you start doing commercials, you lose sight of the game. And lo and behold, I've noticed Justin Tucker in commercials this year for the Kraken or the Craven or something like that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Isn't Josh Allen also in commercials too?
Yeah, and has he won a Super Bowl yet?
He also got engaged to Haley Seinfeld this week as well.
He
Important
did.
news.
You're jumping games here. How do you feel about Mark Andrews regaining his value, though? I know you were calling for him to be potentially droppable early on. As the further he gets away from the car accident, it seems the better he's getting.
Well, I'm pretty sure at the beginning, before the year started, I'm pretty sure I had him as a top tight end. I can't remember. But anyway, I'm glad he's back. I still think they need another wide receiver if it's not Deontay Johnson or Rashad Bateman. They need somebody else there and they need to fix their defense.
Absolutely. But I picked Baltimore. I thought the home team would win this one. Lost this one thanks to Justin Tucker. You won it and picked Philly. So I think you got the lead now, and I think it's going to stay that way for the rest of the week. So you picked up one on me this week, but we can move on to the 2 prime time matchups. The first one was the 49ers at the Bills. It was a very snowy game. The Bills dominated this game after a shaky start, and they won it 35-10. Brock Purdy throws for 94 yards. So this is the guy that you think the 49ers should pay, the guy that threw for 94 yards in a playoff atmosphere game. Do you believe that the season is over for the 49ers at 5-7?
I think it's almost over. They're hanging on by a thread. It's hard to envision them making it with both their best two running backs getting knocked out and their best receivers been out all year, basically. I mean, I know he was out there, but he wasn't really out there at the beginning, if you know what I mean. Anyway, it's a snowy game for a team that's used to being in California. I mean, I understand San Francisco is a little cooler than most places in California, but still, you're going to a blizzard in Buffalo against a team that's healthier and a little bit better right now than you anyway. I wouldn't necessarily hold this game against the 49ers or Brock Purdy, but I will say we're getting very close to the end of the year. We're moving into week 14, and it's a do or die right now. Their only saving grace is that the other teams are also either 5-7 or 6-6 or within striking range of tying. And it might be down to the wire which team and the NFC West actually makes the playoffs. So, but it'll be interesting. But Buffalo absolutely deserved the win. They crushed the 49ers, and I feel terrible for trading James Cook away for CeeDee Lamb earlier in the year. Awful. Just awful. Anything else?
Yep. No. Are you impressed with Ray Davis, though?
I wouldn't say impressed.
He had like 60
To,
yards and a touchdown, right?
Yeah, but he's not worked his way into a permanent lineup. Like he comes when the game's well in hand. So I'm not there
He
yet.
had
To
a good
me,
spot work with Cookout.
well, Cook is clearly the better player, just watching them play. I think Ray Davis is gonna get a lot of work as we get into the cold weather like this, but he hasn't done enough for me to be impressed. And he hasn't started enough or played enough for me to be impressed.
How many people said Buffalo would not win the division this year, and they were giving it to the Jets or the Dolphins? And here we are at the end of week 13, and they've already wrapped up the division crown.
I was not one of those people,
Me
Jeff.
either. Me either. It's just,
You pick the team with the best quarterback. That's pretty
yeah.
much what you do.
And they might have the best coach too. So out of the four teams.
Are you saying offensive coordinator, or are you back on the McDermott train after being critical of him?
Well, I still think McDermott's probably better than McDaniel. He's definitely better than Mayo, and he was probably better than Saleh entering the year. So I think that even if I was off the McDermott, I think I can be both sides of this. I think he could be the best coach in the division, and I also think that he could be the one holding them back to a Super Bowl.
That's fair.
So
I can agree with that.
yeah, and I just think that you follow the coach and the quarterback and even the GM. I like the Bills GM. He came from Carolina, so of course I like him.
Hey, some former Carolina guys are finding success elsewhere.
Not Deontay Johnson. We'll see if he
What a
gets targets this week.
what a bust he's been this year. Like he had a couple games where it looked like he was gonna have a phenomenal year, and then especially right around when he was traded, nothing.
Absolutely. All right, you ready for the Monday night game?
Yeah, let's do it.
We both picked Denver, both got it right. This was a shootout that we didn't really see being a shootout, especially with Denver's defense and even the Browns defense being good, but it was a 41-2 game. So 73 total points. Hopefully everyone smashed the over in this matchup. But Winston had 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, and you got the full Winston experience all in one game. And he is on his 30 for 30 pace, 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions pace from his Tampa Bay Buccaneers days. Nick Chubb doesn't look good in the run game. I think that's part of the issue here is that they're not establishing the run game. I know I've been harping on that all year for all teams, not just the Browns, but teams are getting away from the run too quickly. Jeudy has the best revenge game for a wide receiver of all time. So scoring or getting 200 plus yards in his return. I think even though the Browns took a loss in this game, I think Jerry Jeudy can get a victory in this game. Also, living up to that extension that I know that you ragged on him a little bit about, or the Browns about giving him that extension, but he's playing quite well right now, and I think that he's going to be a very good number 2 wide receiver for this Browns team. I think they need a wide receiver 1 in the offseason. Amari Cooper was it. Amari Cooper had checked out and moved on to Buffalo, which we saw that really fun play in Buffalo, by the way. I know we just got done covering Buffalo, but Josh Allen threw a touchdown pass to himself with an assist from Amari Cooper.
That was a really fun play.
That won me a fantasy matchup. So I won by more than that, but that was the play that put me up and over the other team. Elijah Moore and Njoku will eat, and I think the Browns are a lot more fun when Winston plays. I don't think that they're a viable playoff team or a viable playoff contender with Winston, but I think they're a much more fun team to watch. Nix had a night of ups and downs. He threw 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions in the game, so not a great night by Nix, but enough for them to win. It was the pick sixes by Winston that really was the icing on the cake for the Broncos. Almost the third pick six in that game too. And McLaughlin takes the lead in the backfield for Denver, which questions if Javonte Williams is even rosterable in leagues now.
He's rosterable. He's not startable, and very close to cutting him, to be honest with you. But Jerry Jeudy.
But that's a
Jerry
slip up you'll have
Jeudy,
to leave in.
Jerry Jeudy with 235 yards added this week is now on pace to break 1,000 yards for the first time in his 5-year career. 5 years, Jeff. This is the first time he might break 1,000 yards, and it's because Cleveland's playing catch up, and it's because Jameis Winston's throwing to him, and this was a revenge game. I don't think he's going to put up the pace without that. So
We will
see. He only needs 120 yards receiving yards to get to that point, and he only needs 23 targets to have the most targets that he's ever had as well. So he's got five games left. No, 4 games left, I think, to be able to do this. I think he'll get the yards, may or may not get the targets. We'll see. I mean, it was surprisingly a really good game. I think everyone thought it would be a lower scoring defensive game, and it ended up being a crazy 73-point game total.
Absolutely smashed the over. A lot of these games smashed the over. I wish I would have with the Bills and the 49ers, but I got a little scared because of the snow game. Scared.
It's all right.
It was a fun game
know
to
next
watch,
time.
though.
It
I don't know if
was.
you watched at the end of the game where McDermott made Josh Allen do a snow angel. So
I think for me, the Sunday and Monday night game, like, were better than the Thanksgiving and Black Friday games. Like,
yeah,
there's a lot of really close games on Sunday. You know, the Sunday night and the Monday night game were awesome too.
agreed. But I do like all this football, and this is the reason why there's no bye weeks this week, so they could have the max amount of inventory to spread out over 4 days of football.
All right. Well, that's it for me. Is that it for you?
I am good, sir.
All right. So I've got 14 of 16. You got 13 of 16. Pretty freaking good for week 13 predictions. That does it for this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you all for downloading and listening to this episode. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. Please leave us a comment and share the show. Every little bit helps.
You can find us on all podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy and with our handle at N2E Fantasy on all social media platforms. Please join our community and give us a follow. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember, it's truly never too early for fantasy football. Thank you again.
Bye, everybody.